of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the king of podcasts.
I watched Civil War on Friday night last week. I will say there were quite a few good performances on the acting side. I thought Cailee Spaeny was really awesome in the role, just trying to become this young, aspiring photojournalist. But they wanted to call them war photographers. Kirsten Dunst, obviously, there's no doubt. Her, Jesse Plemons working together on this movie. Jesse Plemons steals the scene in his role. Wagner, Moura, I don't know what to think of it. It kind of gave me more like of a Javier Bardem kind of a feel to himself. I'm not sure. I was expecting more from this movie. It was vague. Did it have to be vague? Listen, Hollywood, Alex Garland, director of A24 Civil War. If you're going to do the movie that we all expect it to be, okay, don't pussyfoot it. Don't do it half-ass. Don't be afraid of the backlash if you're going to go ahead and put the story that you think that Hollywood wants to go and see and that you want the rest of the world to see. You want to show Civil War in America? You know what you could have done? Portray it the way that Hollywood wanted you to do it. Because now we're getting a mixed bag. The plot was thin. Photojournalists being called war photographers. And there's this big interest in war photography. Is that a thing? No. What Civil War did in the media perspective of what I'm going to talk about tonight is delusional. It's Fantasyland. Hollywood shouldn't be in the habit of creating these kind of movies because it doesn't have anything based on logic for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'll give you that ahead of time. At least watch it once. You give it the credit for that. Obviously, people are watching. It got $24 million this past weekend. And you know what? I was waiting for something to happen. Honestly, I felt like the story was slow. It was plotting. It was. They were trudging along. It was a road trip movie. I still felt like, you give me the ending, and I'm like, that's the ending? It's so flat. I'm sure some of you already know what it is, and you might have watched it yourself. But look what the Hollywood Reporter writes. Because in the critic's notebook of the Hollywood Reporter, Asa Nefertari Ulen says that while this was a bold attempt for a movie like this, it cowers in fear from the divisions that surely inspired the movie in the first place. As always, I'm very apolitical when it comes to these kind of things. All I'm saying is, we know there's a lot of division, a lot of divisiveness right now in politics, a lot of tribalism. Okay. And the fact is that you want to go put this movie out here, which everybody thought was going to just create divisiveness and fear and stoke some shit. Okay. We know they were trying to go ahead and get people triggered with this movie. Good job. You did that. Mission accomplished. But other than that, what else did this movie do once you actually had the movie? Once you got people interested to catch the movie, the marketing has been criticized all over the place. Now, what did this movie give you? In making people for 6 months or more to catch this movie in the theaters. What did they get? Let's take what the Hollywood Reporter says. They ask, well, what happened to the political and social divisions cleaving the United States ultimately collapsed the nation into abyss? If the wars of rhetoric, culture, values cause a series of irreparable breaks, whole states secede and we descend into an actual war. Okay, we should understand that there are still levers in place. If some people out there feel like government is going astray and the will of the people, of which government is being voted by, all right, let's just go basic civics. There can be the Confederation of States. There can be other things that would happen that would not cause necessarily right away a secession of states. Okay. So you do this very vague. You don't really make a whole lot of sense of what's going on here. There's not a lot of people that might even understand what happens if there could even be a civil war. Like Civil War, everybody thinks about, okay, there was the colonies and then there was the switch between North and South. And here you're trying to say there's like 4 different splits. And that makes no sense at all. They go on to say these are menacing questions made palpable because many of us feel we're at the brink. As we swirl in a civil war of ideas, a civil war of ideologies, a civil war in public discourse and policy, it's creating two completely different frames of reality. More than 40% of Americans polled just 2 years ago by YouGov and The Economist said they believe the nation could turn so far in itself that a civil war is possible within this decade. That's what they said. But there's something to be said about people that feel like, well, why are we getting to this point? See, I never go into the opinion, again, I'm apolitical, but also I'm very independent in my thinking. Let's put it like this. Basically, the last 40, 50, 60 years, the way government's supposed to run hasn't been run that way. It doesn't matter what side is saying what. That's just the way it is. That's also what I'm going to say. But we're not at the point of civil war. So while they call the movie solid, the writer here says that Civil War tells us bad things are happening, but never tells us why they are happening. Correct. We're completely lost here. We're left to just think about, oh, well, maybe just something comes up that we might get some idea. Okay? This writer is haunted by images of torture and terror of the North American experience. And she's going back to some historical ideas, which was not even in the movie, but that's just her thought process of making, this scares me. Right. There's so much blood in the soil, and the film imagines even more a slow drip from mangled bodies, but for what cause? Now, in the story itself, let's go ahead and give a little context. She gives it here. Journalists, photojournalists, by the way, they're not journalists. Let's just make that clear. All these people are doing are taking pictures that will tell a story. Like even that is delusional because there is no money out there for any newspapers or publications to be able to go and send people on the road. Okay, put them in a nice hotel, put them in harm's way. How many journalists do we have out there in these big corporate publications that are not getting paid at all or paid well or on the brink of being fired or laid off? How many journalists do you know of that would go into the brink of war like that? That's not going to happen. Oh, so it's only from these photojournalists, these war photographers, as they call them? They're not journalists. Let's just make that clear. Journalist Lee Smith, Joel, played by Wagner Moura, Sammy, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson, and Jesse, Cailee Spaeny, traveled through the war-torn mid-Atlantic, taking a route through West Virginia to get to New York to Washington, D.C. They maintain their journalistic integrity and an innate compulsion to document the truth by driving them into the deadliest zones of military combat. What? See, you think we're getting something good out of like these stories here of the Civil War? We're going to get this. We're going to document this correctly. All they did was just document death, people getting killed, and no one getting in the way of it. I don't know. Have I seen a lot of like photography like that in the Middle East? I mean, how much of that would we get in Vietnam? Do we really pay attention to that at all? See, the thing is, they were trying to use the catalyst of saying the photojournalist perspective, which is objective. No, it's not. No, it's not. We forget that journalists, they don't care about which side, maybe. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But for the most part, if it bleeds, it leads. They're bloodthirsty. They don't care about human life and the human condition. They're not even worried so much about themselves. Lee Smith's character makes it clear to Jesse's character about, well, once you are dead, I'll make sure I get the photo of you when you get killed. So they didn't care about themselves, let alone do they care about other people. Like they do lose people in this, but it doesn't matter. They just feel like, oh, it's not a big deal. They don't care about their own lives. They think they're martyrs here. They think they're, brave for doing what they're doing, going out with the soldiers out here in the line of battle. I'm sorry. It doesn't even make sense. I'm pretty sure when I saw an area of New York they were showing where there was a protest in the initial part of the movie, I feel like that was Chicago because of all these brownstones and all the brick. I didn't think that was New York City at all. Don't know where they were. So this journalist here for Hollywood Reporter says they maintain their journalistic integrity. What journalistic integrity is that? Is that today's journalistic integrity, which is none? Or are we talking about, let's get the story. I never hear them talking about their editors. I never hear them talking about who they're reporting back to. They don't have any problem, making the trips to go ahead and, get gas and put themselves in danger and have to use all this money in order to negotiate their way to Washington, D.C. No serious or legitimate news source would be doing this. And most importantly, photojournalism, or they said war photographers. So where are these pictures going to? We don't see a whole lot of like them showing like CNN or MSNBC or ABC or whatever, right? We're not seeing any of that. Not so much. They're using radio because, of course, communications have broken down. We don't have regular media because, we're in civil war. So who's printing the newspapers here? Is that what the idea is? Are we getting newspapers that are going to be printing these stories? And also, these people are making the trek up to Washington, D.C. to talk to the president, right? I never hear anything about them say, they're going to do an interview with the president. I never hear them anything about the questions being asked. They did in some part. But seriously, they glommed over the part of, doing an interview. And that's it. Otherwise, it's picture, picture, picture. That's it. It's also the idea where, in the Civil War, we have certain forces that are in fatigues and others that are not. And we don't know who's who. Like, we're supposed to kind of guess that as well. And, the idea that there can be communities that are not involved in a civil war and they don't have any, dog in the fight. They're just kind of living their lives. And these journalists are like, you mean you're not into it? Huh? No, because people can live their own lives. They can live in small towns and they don't even give a shit about what's going on in big cities or everything else that's going on in the world. That could really happen. Going on in the story, she says that by visually documenting the tragedy of a not-so-distant future with impartiality, these journalists demonstrate heart and guts and even glory, but few opinions. They're journalists. And this writer here expects opinion or commentary. That's not what journalists are supposed to do. Of course, but we know now that, these days, objectivity is thrown out the window. You have to cloud your op-ed with your news story. That's it. No one can think for themselves. You have to create the narrative for them. That's the way it is. They talk about, aside from one expression of passionate frustration within an American president who has disrupted norms and engaged in acts of authoritarianism, we don't even know what he did to get to this point. Nothing we even know has said anything about this point. We're blind as to what the story was that led to the Civil War. Wouldn't that be something that we'd like to get to know first? But we have no clue as to what one side is on and what's the other. And that's fine. Okay, you don't want to tell us. You don't want to get us that deeply involved into it. But the photojournalists, are you making us like them? Are you trying to make us like them? Do you want us to feel bad for them? Because honestly, the only person I actually felt I was, wanted to hopefully see that she would be spared in the whole movie, because there were people that got killed, was Jesse's character, Cailee Spaeny. That was the only one, because she was fresh and new to this. And, hopefully she's young. She just got into this. And she was, admiring someone that she says was a role model of hers. And she got to work with her. Okay. But I do not think there are young women out there, or young people in general, that think that journalism is like as a profession to go into now. Like if this movie is the onus that makes you want to go ahead and get into journalism, oh boy, you're in for a sad awakening. Now, I was into radio and into broadcasting in general, watching Pump Up the Volume. Okay, I got a different feeling of that, right? WKRP in Cincinnati, another place that also got me interested. Otherwise, no. The only scene that finds him intervening, attempting to make an impact on rising tensions and changing a likely outcome, is one in which you're trying to save the lives of their colleagues and not a single photograph is taken. We mentioned already Jesse Plemons, who, by the way, he's done a lot of good stuff. Going back to Breaking Bad, Fargo, so many other movies he's been in. He's great. Now, when he delivers a line, which you've already seen in the trailers, what kind of American are you? She writes here, this writer for Hollywood Reporter, this should be the line that leads the audience to the point of origination for this conflict. Are we fighting over immigration? Is it about race? Has the war started over because of the water shortage? The film would be stronger if it was made explicitly clear that no one really knows what the fight is about. The issues have become as unrecognizable as the bodies that are now dead because of them. But Civil War, they say, she goes on to say, does not linger on themes consistent with the actual Civil War. Characters with an ethnocentric worldview are the anomaly. They go on to write that in the safe space, the journalists visit for food and rest on the journey to D.C., a UN-style organization is providing tents and sustenance, and all the people of this crazy country are represented in full joy. They are weary, unhoused by secession and death, and a 3-term president who tilted the nation over the edge, but they have books and jump ropes, even hula hoops, and they have reached each other. So they're making this look like a third world country. It didn't even make sense what they did right there. Oh, these people in this like abandoned football stadium. Anyways. She goes on to say that Civil War never fully explains why there's a Civil War. What kind of journalists are these? When we don't even know in their conversations what this is all about. What started all this? All we know is we see these journalists going to where ultimately the Civil War ends. Yes. Now, in the story, which is fictional, all of it fictional, at the very end of the film, the audience knows bad presidential leadership enabled the war, but it's still not the reason for the war in the first place. Why is this happening? Also, spoiler, the president would not be groveling in the Oval Office to be left alone to get shot. By this point, the president would have found a bunker or some other safe space where he would have been protected by military or other people. Like that right there, that's Hollywood not knowing what the fuck they're talking about, okay? Again, I don't care about the politics. I would have, you know what? This young lady right here that's writing this story, I'd have preferred that he just give us a story that they wanted to really tell. Just do that. I was prepared for that. Like, okay, you wanted to be like, we know what you wanted to be. Come on, we know. Hollywood, we know what you want. We know what you wanted this to be. So just do that. Just do that. You know what? And people wouldn't have been any different. Like, you're not going to be any more, critically acclaimed than what you are. I will say this. The action scenes, the military moments, very well done. The last about 20, 30 minutes, those scenes were really well done. That looked pretty solid. I give it that. But the point is, she goes on to say here that Civil War does not resonate like a Casablanca. And it does not explicitly address the moment. Reason people cannot fix a problem we cannot name. So her thing was, she wanted to go ahead and address the issues that are causing division now. Regardless of what she thinks causes division. But everybody can go ahead and have their own way of stating how we are in a division right now. And that's fine. We are all, entitled to that. Why is America so fucked up right now? Why is it so broken? In many ways. Well, we can go into that, but not on this program. Apolitical. Take it outside. It's like taking a fight. Take the fight outside. We don't want it in here. Thank you very much. Now, there are some people that are trying to defend the movie and say, well, there were some key points that were made. The central message remains ambiguous, but focuses on guerrilla journalists and a sense of victory against the fascist government. Well, they're saying it's fascist. We don't know what caused it to be fascist or how we know it's fascist, except for the fact that the president is serving a third term. That's it. That's all we know. They try to say that the journalists in the Civil War, just according to the Screen Rant, by the way, they must navigate moral complexities, becoming emotionally detached to capture the harsh realities of war. But we don't need these people. Today, if we had a civil war, we wouldn't have photojournalists or war photographers doing this. That would be the people that are now out there with their iPhones or their Android phones, whatever, and they're out there shooting it and streaming on any social media platform. They're streaming on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X. That's where the war will be televised. The revolution will be televised, but it will be on those platforms. People are not going to be waiting for some damn newspaper, and people are not going to be waiting to watch, the cable network or the network shows for the coverage. They're not going to do that. They're not. So they don't have any clue what they're talking about. I mean, seriously? This could have been a period piece. You could have said this movie was taking place, like 15 years ago. Like pre-social media, you could have said it was done then. Like, I couldn't even tell you if it was like current day now or not. They're in a beat up, truck, and they're going out there like, Plus, on top of that, remember, some of these photojournalists that they have that are going along for the ride, they're a bunch of goofballs. Like, let me put it to you like this. Moral complexities being emotionally detached to the capture the harsh realities of war. And I'm watching Wagner Moore's character along with the other people just drinking away, having a good old time with Civil War. And they're all partying. Partying like, we're in business. We got something to do. Woohoo! Civil War. Clink. And nobody explains that part either. And nobody explains like the kind of like camaraderie that there is among the journalists and the way they act. Moral complexities. My ass. Moral complexities. They go on to say here, and they put this in bold letters, the film is not a concern with the plausible details and political considerations that exist in the modern United States. So why do the movie? Why do the movie? Instead, Civil War skims over these foundational details to focus on the front and center realities of war in general, regardless of any political motivations. I guess that could be, what's the best word for it? Commendable, maybe, but it's not. It's just vague. It's flat. That's what he did. They try to say that the point of the scene and the movie at large is that the conflict throughout Civil War is about who is shooting at you, not necessarily what side you are fighting for. So they try to say in the story here that most of Civil War is told through the eyes of the journalists. These are not journalists. They didn't write one fucking word. They're not writing anything down. They're not, taking any notes or documenting anything like, facts or whatever, reporting sources. They're not doing that. They're with fucking cameras. What are you talking about? As documentarians, anyways. Well, why are they using cameras when they could be just taking video? Like, what the fuck would that supposed to mean? See, why don't you just take video? Y'all got whatever it is going to take video, so why not just going to take video on your phones? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, these big fancy cameras. Like, I'm surprised they didn't have flash bulbs like it's a fucking like Batman movie or something like that, Something out of Gotham. What kind of reality is this? It's really the delusion of what they said looks like journalism. And they keep calling these people journalists. They're just photographers. They're just photographers. That's it. They're not journalists. You want to call them photojournalists? Okay, but what news are they reporting? This content's not going anywhere. They're with Reuters, I guess they said, but okay, but then what else? We don't hear anything else about anything else. Like there's one group, I saw there was one lady that was actually doing a report where she's holding a mic and she's trying to get a report on the site of, in front of the Oval, in front of the White House, right? And that's about it. But that's one out of all of them. Everybody else, photographers. What the fuck is that? While this is the main idea of their profession, it becomes more clear throughout the film that the journalists lean more on the side of the Western forces of Florida Alliance, particularly because they're offered access and protection in the war zone areas from those parties. Oh, that's nice. That's convenient. So, there's no objectivity. Again, they're leaning more on the side of the Western forces of the Florida Alliance, which I couldn't even tell you who the fuck those are. I know Western forces are supposedly Texas and California with 2 stars on it. Florida Alliance, where do they come from? I couldn't even tell you. They never made that clear at all. And then he also said American soldiers are under the command of the president in the movie, instructed to kill journalists on sight. Where did they say that? I don't even remember where they even heard about this. So as the president is killed, I'm going to spoil here. Okay, the president is going to get killed. You probably will have known this already, okay? If you're waiting for it on Netflix, I don't care. I'm going to spoil anything if you're going to be a Netflix fans. You're going to wait for it on streaming, okay? Go right ahead. Now, the president begs, don't let him kill me. And Wagner Moura's character says that'll do, because they asked for a quote before the rulers shot to death. Why does that matter? Get a quote. He's not writing it down. He's not doing anything about it. Like, what kind of interview is that? Stupid. Joel, like the rest of the journalists, is only invested in documenting the moments that can be sold and sensationalized to the press. Although if he were asked to choose, he would likely be part of the resistance. Right. So, sensationalized and sold to the press. So they're going to sell the photos and sell the story? Right. So journalism is supposed to be, what can you sell papers with or sell magazines with or, sell subscriptions with, and what can be sensationalized? So that's what journalism is? That's what people care about? That's what journalism is supposed to be, right? Do you see this? Everything explains. And then the Jesse character, Cailee Spaeny, who we're going to probably see a whole lot of her. She was great. No doubt about it. Her character, Jesse, learns through Civil War that in order to do her job well, she must be emotionless and essentially have no opinion. And her innocence is completely ruined at the moment. Tragic maturation process is solidified when she takes the final shot of Joel, or Wagner Moura's character, and a few of the Western Forces soldiers standing over the dead president in what would be theoretically the most important photo in American history. And she became a celebrity photographer for what she did. How many celebrity photographers do we know? For news coverage? I never heard of them. Not really. This is what Hollywood thinks journalism is? Or just this director? And it bastardizes what the profession is. What it's all about. It doesn't make any sense at all what they did and how they decided to portray this. It was just dumb. It really was just dumb. By the way, I was certain about this. Now, AP wrote a story about this to talk about the movie itself. And they said that Alex Garland wrote this in 2020 as the pandemic was unfolding and a presidential election was approaching. So keep that in mind. That's where the whole thought of where we are now with Civil War, that kind of helps give an idea of where they were and where Alex Garland's mind was by putting this movie together. So the AP, which is, one of the standards of journalism in America, okay, because usually if the American Associated Press gets something reported, that's usually like one of the most accurate places to get news from. So the writer here, Jake Coyle, he writes that the movie, perhaps out of fear of being too contemporary, set in a near future dystopia. No, it's not. Near future. There's something that shows it was futuristic. Scant mention is made of race, income equality, or climate change, and has connective tissue with many current issues, particularly that apply to journalists. But it's telling that even a provocative movie that even imagines America's all-out warfare is timid about today. And yet, even as Civil War was recently current, would that have been appropriate in an election year? Yeah, we all kind of figured it out. Yeah, 7 months before an election season. Yeah, you want to put this out there? Got it. And there were promotional materials about the movie that we also heard about. An AI controversy that also is now smearing this movie in the current meantime. So there were some AI-generated promotional images. And April 17th, Civil War distributor A24, of course, now they're trying to go and promote the movie for another week. And they're going against some pretty serious competition. Like, let me look at what they have this weekend. Besides the movie I'm going to watch was the movie I'm going to watch this weekend is the Guy Ritchie film, which is the Ministry of Ungentlely Warfare. They're going against Abigail, horror movie, and Spy Times Family Code, White, a very major anime movie, which those movies have been doing pretty well so far. So they got some competition this weekend. And so to go up against that competition, they decided, okay, they wanted to depict a different American city marked by war. There's New York City's Washington Square Park, overrun by military vehicles. The Las Vegas Sphere lies in ruins, and gunmen advancing towards San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. So they said that the posters were AI generated, and tells include a car with 3 doors on the Miami poster, and impossible architectural elements with like missing and misshapen windows. And commenters at A24's Instagram post of these posters says this sucks, AI sucks. The rights for a company that seemingly values artistry using AI generated works for advertising is a real bummer. A source close to the movie confirmed they were AI generated, and the entire movie is a big what if, so we wanted to continue that on social. Powerful imagery of iconic landmarks with that dystopian realism. But that's one of the things that AI is now being a part of when it comes to even creating movie posters. But AI is much more of a problem for journalism than that. Let's just say it like that. Going into the news, going to the media now, there's a lot of shit happening that is not doing good. We've already talked about the media right now really struggling altogether with a lot of things. Because number one, AI is not going away. And said AI is now going to be further driven in the future of media and entertainment. We know that because we just had this weekend the National Association of Broadcasters show in Las Vegas. The AI is going to reshape the broadcast media entertainment industry in the United States. So the NAB had their show in Las Vegas. And the topics that were most important of the show was AI, content creation, streaming, and next-gen TV. And a lot of AI creation coming from companies in China, by the way, that will make their way into America. Just keep an eye on what happens very much soon enough. We'll see it happen. A story for The Guardian also got reported about it because an op-ed piece says that the media industry is dying, but I can still get paid to train AI to replace me. So she says she's been suffering from an acute case of Weltschmerz. She is Palestinian heritage, and she's been weighed down by the survivor's guilt. She's watching the unfolding genocide in Gaza. Now, I'm not going to get much farther into that because I know everybody's all caught up in what that's all going to be. So she talks about the fact that the media industry, after all, seems to be in free fall. It's always good to try to secure a parachute, just in case. And the other day, one seemed to present itself to her in her LinkedIn messages. There was an automated missive from an AI company saying I have the perfect set of skills to help them write the first draft of AI history. I could, the generic message enthuse, get up to $15 an hour to coach an AI model by assessing the quality of AI-generated writing and crafting original responses to prompts. So she says, I could get paid less than the New York minimum wage to train an AI model to take over my job. Interesting. But that's something we're getting to right now. That could very well happen. AI could come into play. And so the media thinks that, the disappearance of journalism. And they're basically talking about the journalism that they all subscribe to anyway. Let's just make that clear. So NPR has a story about this. And Fernando Alfonso III talks to several educators that have a lot to say about the state of journalism, the state of the news industry, and how they are making sure students are prepared to enter a turbulent business. He goes on to write that almost every week of 2024 has featured news of media layoffs, which would place the sector on pace for 10,000 jobs lost this year, according to Fast Company, and leaving many professionals planning eulogies for the news industry while asking hard questions. And a senior multimedia editor at Scientific American asked a question on X on February 22nd. Says, quote, "Is it ethical, quote unquote, to be teaching journalism right now?" Tulika Bose, by the way, is her name. And she also goes on to say, "I know folks have strong feelings about this, especially journalism professors. Trust me, there's no one who loves journalism as much as me, or someone who is consistently screaming about the blurring lines between content and journalism, but I'm coming from a place of concern." So among the journalists he spoke with David Reif, Director of School of Journalism and Media at the University of Texas in Austin, David Kerplus, Dean of the Missouri School of Journalism, and Jelani Cobb, Dean of the Columbia Journalism School. Among others, but we'll go to those if we need to mention them. So one of the journalists say it's disheartening and alarming. We see this kind of collapse. It makes it harder for all of us, makes it harder for the audiences that rely on these organizations for stories, for news, for information. But the collapse, let's just make it clear, it's on them. It's on those journalistic outlets that they're not prepared for the digital disruption. They're not prepared for the circulation to drop, their advertising to falter, and the corporate suits that decided to go ahead and do what they're doing to not pay attention to the fact that if you keep dropping and doing the corporate playbook of micromanaging and cutting more jobs to continue to go ahead and keep your profit at level or continue to grow your profit off of cuts. That tells you everything you need to know about how journalism went downhill. That's what's the collapse. That's where it comes from. Professor Cobb. Okay. So there's a couple of clips I'm going to play for you. First, Graciela Machowski, who's Dean of Craig Newmark's Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York, and asking about teaching journalism while the industry compresses. So here's what she says.
So what's the alternative? Should we, because this is a very tough time for journalists, and that is a moment in which journalists is really desperately needed because it's a really tough time in the world for many other reasons. Should we just all quit and just do something different? I think it's a very demoralizing thought for all the people who are doing their jobs, who are risking their lives around the world.
Before I move along with that, who's risking their lives? There are some journalists that are out in the field, like say the Middle East, or they're in Africa or wherever else. But how many of those journalists actually encompass the entire group of journalists? What? 1%? So I don't get where she's talking about. This is what's happening with the audience there with what she's saying here. That doesn't make any sense. They're putting their jobs on the line, taking a risk. Come on. Now let's take David Kerpius from the Missouri School of Journalism. He says this.
Journalism newsletters is a new product, and journalism podcasts are considered new products. Now, those have been around a while, but they're being used in different ways, and there are innovations around those. And so we're going to have to change. And what we talk about here is understanding the audience, where they are, that they're not monolithic, and what time they're looking for information, the types of information they're looking for, and the platforms they're on, and then trying to deliver it to where they are. And so it's no longer the newspaper being thrown up on the doorstep every morning as the only way of delivery, or the 6 o'clock news on TV as the only way of delivery.
By the way, with some of these journalism professors, they're so out of touch that they have to go ahead and revisit the way journalism was. In the age of the internet, there is no possible way for you to control the dissemination of news like you did before the internet. That's gone. The internet took that away from you. That autonomy that you have is no longer yours. For good or bad. That's just how it is. And there's no other way to go and say about that. Now, Professor Cobb talks about the idea that while business in journalism, there's no money in journalism, that doesn't matter. We still need to go and have journalism being trained. Anyways. They talked to Mark Lodato, dean of the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. And of these clips, this might be one of the most poignant clips that's worth playing on the program. So I'm going to play it.
I've been answering the question, is this a good major, for 20 years now? And the reality is there are still thousands of jobs in journalism. And what I really appreciate is that many of us, like I was 30, 40 years ago as a student myself, come to journalism because they understand the importance of the work. There are many prospective students today who want to make a difference in our society, and journalism remains one of the ways in which you can have incredible impact.
Now, he goes on to say that I think it's critical for any student walking into not just journalism, but the media landscape today to have a solid understanding of the challenges and the disruption that's happening in the industry and in those various sectors. Because if they don't, they won't be able to pivot appropriately and get you on a road to success. So a sense and understanding of adaptability. That's probably a pretty solid way to go and say it, if you have to do that. But the journalism professors are kind of out of touch. Because, and that's some cases, hey, they're tenured. They might just feel like, well, they really have an understanding of the internet and how it's constantly changing in front of them. The curriculum they might have, the school books they might have, the textbooks they might have are also outdated. So how are you going to teach journalism today when it's such a different thing today? I mean, some people, I think they still go to journalism school, but, you know, you have to realize you can't go for journalism or communications like you did anymore. Like, you can still go into broadcasting, I would imagine, but you have to understand is that it's the way you present the news. And that in some cases, you know, news that you're going to get today, I can't tell you one place that's just straight news and really gives news factually, and that's it. Because all we have are aggregators that find the news and somehow we can disseminate it for ourselves. But no one is doing the real job of just giving us the news and letting us see what it is and what it means. We don't have that anymore. It's no longer allowed. When people see a movie like Civil War and think that's journalism, and the professors are out of touch, we're in a bad shape. Talk about broken. What kind of society are you going to have when people don't even know what's going on? The only reason anybody knows what's going on in certain things is we see the videos out there that people record and they put up on social media. I can actually get more news and information from the feeds that I see out there on all my social media of particular people or particular places that will give us the news, and we'll get headlines, right? We'll get headlines that maybe like 50, 75 words maybe at the most, or not even that. We'll just get a headline, and that's all the news we need. And sometimes, you know, I can just look at a clip and I can see it for myself. And I was a journalism major. I'll know what they're talking about. No problem. But no one has the attention span for the kind of news that they want to do. No one cares for the opinion editorials that we see on TV or being put in stories like this. No one cares. The bulk of America doesn't care. The bulk of people don't care. We're short attention span now. We just want what we want to find out right then and now, and that's all that matters. And remember what we talked about, you know, what journalism is trying to do to try to keep themselves alive? So let's not worry about the fact that, oh, you know, we can't make money anymore. NPR also reports about how Google blocks California news in response to a bill that would force the tech giant to pay. Australia had the same problem, remember, with Facebook. And then Facebook decided, we're getting out. So Google started blocking news articles as of last week in California. And stories from California-based news organizations will not be available for an unspecified number of state residents who use Google to search the web in a show of its might as Google attempts to quash the state proposal it's been fighting for years. The journalism code that they would want in California, the law they want to have is to make tech companies like Google and Meta pay publishers for news content to make up for the lack of advertising that the news publications can't get because they're blaming the tech companies for that. You're not going to win that fight. And Google doing that, not surprised. They took their muscle and they did it. Well, good on them. So there's a couple other things coming in for radio I want to talk about real quick. Jacobs Media Tech Survey 2024 talked about that faced with subscription fatigue, free radio is now more appealing than ever. Oh, so we're saying now that people don't want to spend all the kind of money for Spotify or Sirius or Pandora or Apple or iTunes or whatever. And now they're saying, or Apple Music. And now they're going to say, the subscription fees are too much. We're going to go back to free radio. Come on. In their survey from 2020, 62% of core radio listeners strongly agreed that subscription fees for audio and video content were concerning, and now it's gone up to 71% in 2023. And this year, the tech survey says that 46% strongly agree, 28% agree they're more concerned about the growing number of subscription fees paying for media content. So they're thinking that radio is going to get their audience back. No, they're not. No, they're not. It's a nice way to kind of spin it there, but I don't believe it. No. When it comes to radio, the personal people meters right now, the ratings for Nielsen these days, the most popular formats for radio these days are adult contemporary or soccer mom music, news talk, and classic hits. They're looking at the first couple of days of stations, and they're saying that those are the three more formats with 10 or more stations listed in the particular markets. That's what they're showing so far. Does that sound good? I don't know. Not really to me. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That's the show for tonight. I appreciate all of you for listening in and catching the show, and I hope you appreciate my diatribe. But like I said, I'm not going to go ahead and deviate from the fact that if you want to go and watch Civil War, go by all means, go ahead and watch it. I'm not telling you not to. But just know that maybe there's a few things that I might have said about journalism that wasn't wrong, and I think they could have done better with the movie overall. But Hollywood was being a bit of a pussy for not showing the kind of movie that they really wanted to depict. And I don't know who said, don't do it, Alex, or said, or Alex decided to just kind of like chicken out. But you could have just like given people what they wanted and just, trigger people. Might as well, should have been better off doing that. Why not? Anyway, come back for another Broadcasters podcast next week. And remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.